Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest today. We have Honorable Chamisa here to my left, and to my extreme left we have Chris Msoza. So without saying much, I'll hand over to our speakers today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for prioritizing a bill which I think is going to be one of the most important bills that a country can ever have. If you would want to imagine that we've got a mobile penetration rate of over 100%. We now have connected devices all over the place, fiber being trenched almost every doorstep. All our devices are working on the internet, all our devices are becoming cyber, even our vehicles. There are reports that Apple is actually creating cars that will be running on the iOS or their operating system. So the cyber bill is something that is going to be very relevant to the country. It's something that we definitely need. And crime, as we know it, is going to be different. In some countries, the big crime happens on the internet, and it's cyber crime as it were. Just to paint a picture for you, imagine if someone hacks into our blood bank, National Blood Transfusion Service, and changes the blood types that are stored in the database. Imagine what would happen. Doctors tomorrow morning they wake up and they're distributing this blood, and something catastrophic can happen. So cyber has got the potential to become the avenue that terrorism will be committed. And that's the cyber terrorism phenomenon that many countries fear. The reason why perhaps we are gathered here, there's been talk of a cyber bill, and we know on the internet we've seen a lot of speculation about a bill. I know there were efforts to bring reporters here. I think Media Center will comment on why they didn't come. But we know that there are efforts to put a cyber bill, and those efforts emanated from the fact that Baba Jukwa's case was difficult to handle without the relevant statutory instruments that we require. Yeah, I'll comment a bit about generally what a cyber bill should be able to do. Article 57 of our Constitution talks about the right to privacy and the right to have our right not to have one's communication not intercepted. We've got an interception bill in Zimbabwe that's currently in place, which empowers policemen with aid of magistrates' order to get all your records from the service provider, be it ISP or your telephone provider. But this a bill would be something that would look at it broader and talk about how the interception would be done. Now, if someone intercepts your email, so that I can just put this into context, if someone intercepts your email, it's not just the message that they get. There is what we call metadata that's around an email. And this metadata has obviously the sender's email address and the recipient's email address. Over and above that, it has your IP address, which can then be used to locate you. Because when by law, Mr. Chamisa is a lawyer, so I think he'll comment on that more. By law in Zimbabwe, you cannot have a SIM card, you cannot have an internet connection without having your address and your ID verified. So we've got all these details, your details are there, and they can be mapped to an IP address. So interception of an email would mean that it's interception of this metadata as well. Now a cyber bill should have these parameters, now saying that when you're intercepting an email, you can only see which aspects of that email. Because when you're talking about your location, when you're talking about even your emails as it were. There are several other people that are now involved. If I send an email to Media Center or to Linda, for example, a search warrant would get my IP address, it would get the message, and it would also get a thread of an email that I have been communicating with Media Center. And now, if a warrant is only for my emails, then now the police officer has access to information about Linda or Media Center and their IP addresses. There's an overlap there. And so all those parameters have got to be carefully put in place. Now, of concern now, in cyber bills, there are a few countries and there are fears, because when you see a draft that I saw online some time ago, I think Honorable Shamisa was the minister then, would comment more. There is the aspect of using forensic tools. Forensic tools allow remote hacking to be done. When we talk about remote hacking, it's like when you enter the airport, for example, your computer is searched. If you're a suspect, if there's a magistrate order, software can be installed on your computer, and once that software is installed on your computer, someone from the other end can remotely see whatever you're doing on the computer. There are things that are called keyloggers. A keylogger is very dangerous. A keylogger records every keystroke that you're doing on the keyboard. So if I type www.facebook.com, the next thing that I'm going to type is my username, obviously, and then my password. So in that keylog, I can actually get all the information about you. And now when you have your access to your Facebook account, I've got access to, if I have access to your keystrokes, I've got access to your Facebook account, your emails, everything, because you are using a keyboard to type. That's why some banks allow you to use an on-screen keyboard, because a keylogger cannot pick an on-screen keyboard. Well, the effects of that, I think your case is as good as mine. The governments can argue that we want to fight cyber terrorism, we want to fight crime, we want to fight sexual abuse, sexual rights abusers, and the list is endless. But we're giving so much power to individuals, and if we don't have these checks and balances, I'll comment on those a little later, this power can be abused by any government. Any government wants to win an election. Any government is made up of individuals. I mean, we also some texts that were purported to be from WhatsApp that were making newspaper headlines recently. Now imagine if husbands have got that power to install remote forensic tools like that. Even though they are part of law enforcement, that can be very dangerous to the citizens. So all these things that are things that we need to have to be on the lookout on how they are going to be dealt with in a cybersecurity bill. Bearing in mind, I've said that we need to fight crime, and we need to be able to have the appropriate statutory instruments to be able to deal with crime that happens with aid of computers, or that is done on computers, or that's done through the cyber world. I'll give you an illustration of the challenge that Zimbabwe would face. I was at a police office. I wanted to report I was missing something, so I wanted to report a robbery. And whilst I was there was this gentleman who was fuming and was trying to explain to the police officer who was behind the typewriter, telling him that my information was hacked, my information was stolen. And this guy was saying, hacked, what do you mean? Do you mean they stole the computer or what? And they couldn't understand each other, to the point that the commissioner who was behind the keyboard, the typewriter, began to phone and saying, this person is saying data was stolen, computer was hacked. How do you handle this case? Because his form already it requires a serial number, and when information is hacked, you don't have a serial number for that. is asking, do you have proof that you own this laptop? Do you have your receipts? How do we report this crime? But this crime is of a cyber nature. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. You can't have a serial number there. It's not tangible. So that really shows our lack of preparedness. Because each time you kept referring and phoning and saying, okay, we'll investigate this. And your guess is as good as mine. I don't think that case was ever solved because of that and the lack of understanding. So there's a huge task. Now you are empowering a magistrate to get call records. Are we going to equip everyone, from the magistrate to the police officer and everyone, to be able to be on guard of certain things that can be abused by law enforcement officers or even the magistrate themselves, for them to understand what hacking is and the implications? I've seen newspapers making headlines using data that has been infringed, that has been stolen from people. WhatsApp texts making headlines, sometimes stolen emails. They actually write in the article that this email was between so-and-so's wife and so forth. And that is crime, by definition of cyber crime. That is crime. And that has to be highlighted in black and white in our cyber bill. So I was saying all this, trying to show everyone, to paint a picture of where we are as a nation and some of the key things that we need to grapple with. I know the Interception of Communication Bill criminalizes disclosure of interception. If I were Mr. Chamisa here, who's privileged to be in Parliament and being the chairperson of the portfolio committee that deals with ICT, I would recommend that there is disclosure for transparency. I'm not saying that they say that we have got a warrant to intercept so and so because of a sexual abuse crime. No, I'm saying that a transparency report that is of a statistical nature, one that would just say that we have received so many reports from police, and we have received, for example, 30 reports from police. We have turned down 5 because we didn't understand the warrant that came from the magistrate. Something like that. And say that we received 35 were of a political nature, 3 were of sexual abuse crimes, sexual abuse related crimes. 1 was to deal with terrorism, something like that. I think that one, that report would bring some form of guards, some form of checks and balances, some form of accountability for our SPs. Right now it's been going and it's unchecked. And people's emails are being read. I know it's targeted. Then the last thing that I would want to comment on is the issue to deal with mass surveillance. In mass surveillance, I can enter a keyword with the right equipment, enter a keyword, a parameter, say I want to know who's talking about this subject, for example. And if that subject is topical, I can narrow it down to specific parameters. Who's saying this positive, who's saying this negative. And remember, everyone who's connected to the internet, there is an IP address behind it. And that IP address can be translated to your address and your contact information. And that can be very dangerous. So we need to know when, we need to establish through such a bill when the government is allowed to do that, if it is. How should it be used and how can we safeguard against its abuse? Like I was saying, this is any government is made out of individuals who are husbands, who are also political aspirants, who want to win the next election, who own businesses, who have motives. So it's very important for us to have these guards. So over and above everything that I've said, a cyber bill should protect its citizens. In summary, if you want to summarize everything that I've said, it should protect its citizens from other citizens who might commit cybercrime. In committing cybercrime, I'm talking about crime that is committed with the aid of computers, with the use of computers, or through the internet. Not just individuals, we're talking about even companies, institutions, and also lastly, even the government itself. We should be able to protect from government, and even the law enforcement agencies themselves, because they are also individuals, like I was saying. And also, the other thing you'd notice with developed countries like the States, the United States of America, they've got the foreign aspect, how to deal with foreign governments, foreign nationals. That has to be defined in the cyber bill. In terms of sharing of, imagine if someone from the United States wants information of a user from Zimbabwe online, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with information that is from a foreign land? How do we deal with foreign governments? So that's what, in a nutshell, our cyber bill should be able to handle. I think without preempting anything, maybe Mr. Chamisa.
Thank you, Chris, for explaining things to us here and giving us your views. You've touched on many things, surveillance, cybercrime, things that are happening, such as child pornography. These crimes, citizens need to be protected from these crimes, but also citizens need to be protected from what is describing as a prying on spying government that might want to control aspects of its citizens' lives, and the draft bill has implications on that. Without wasting much time, I'm going to ask Honorable Nelson Chamisa to take us through on updates on the cyber draft bill and also its implications on the nation going forward.
Thank you. Do you prefer me standing or seated? I'm a very democratic character. Shall I sit? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, my brother, Marvin. First of all, I just want to apologize for coming late. Certainly not on account of my own mischief. I was not supposed to be the one coming, but I only had to come because I felt that I had to, after I got indication that portraits were somehow reluctant to proceed. I think the discourse on cybersecurity is very critical and very crucial. But crucial and critical as it is, we don't seem to have an appreciation within the corridors of government on the importance and meaning of cybersecurity. There is a narrow conception of cybersecurity within government, certainly driven by technophobic hysteria. Those in government think that cyber security is about protection of the state from the citizens, when in fact it's actually broader. It's actually the other way around. It has to be the protection of the citizen from the state. I know this because having been in government, I realized that within the corridors of government, there are a lot of people who don't seem to appreciate and comprehend this aspect of cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is basically the security of consumers and users, citizens, in terms of their use and utilization of ICT facilities and products. I know that when we were in government, we did the ICT policy, which was ready, which was approved by cabinet, but of course it had some security elements that had not been polished up. And from a process point of view, which is going to be my first point, I had discussions with the minister, I had discussions with the PEMSEC, who told me that they are in the process of redoing the policy, meaning to say that the policy is not yet approved. Why are they redoing it? There were certain dissonances and lack of cohesion within the corridors of government in terms of how a comprehensive document is supposed to come about. When I was still minister, I indicated to them that the country is naked ICT-wise. We are unclothed, we are uncovered in terms of our digital platforms, in terms of our data, in terms of online transactions, in terms of cryptography, digital signatures. We don't have sufficient legislation to protect consumers. Now with WhatsApp, I'm sure you've discovered that hardly would you have any successful prosecution on the part of government because they don't have the law. They are using the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act, I think section 162 to about 168, which are computer-related crimes. But it's very narrow in its scope. It was conceived at a time when WhatsApp was not a thing, when we didn't have Instagram, when we didn't have Facebook, when the computer was this huge equipment. Now we have all these cell phones, we have iPhones, Samsung 4 and stuff like that. It's more complicated, so it's not fit for purpose. That is the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act, and it's not designed for the circumstances of our time. And this then leaves the country very naked and very subjected to serious problems. So that's our first biggest problem, that within government, I don't seem to sense the appreciation and comprehension of the task ahead. The policy has not yet been done, and they have to come up with a policy as of yesterday. If the policy is not yet done, Chris, then the bill is far from being in place. Because process-wise, there has to be a policy first. The policy has to define the parameters of the bill. Then the bill will have to come. So the bill has not yet been done. What we have seen are model bills that we did when I was still a minister, because COMESA did model bills together with SADC. So we use those model bills, also use a template for our consultations with the other colleagues in government. As you may know, when you're talking about ICTs, you talk about also the security element, you talk about other regulators, portals being the key. So there is no bill to talk about at the moment. It's not there, and it's a cause for concern. It's actually a risk and a security threat on the part of citizens, because the proliferation of these platforms is also subjecting people to abuse. Issues of defamation, issues of pornography are challenges that are affecting our citizens. But yet they have no recourse, they have no cover in terms of the law. So the law is far from coming. We need it yesterday. In fact, even artists and musicians, they are victims of the absence of the cyber security framework. Our copyright laws are antiquated and obsolete. They used to cover issues then, but now we have a lot of other problems with piracy, which is a big issue. We need to revisit our laws to make sure that they are compatible with our circumstances. We are killing the talent. Macheso can produce his best, because obviously people are abusing those platforms. Mutukuzi does his best, but his talent is not realized. We need, from a security point of view, the cyber security point of view, to also look at all those laws, so that we either have a dissected approach, the Digital Act coming into place, the Multimedia Act coming into place, the online transactions and e-commerce Act coming into place, then you have the cyber security as a standalone, or have an omnibus approach, so that you get all these aspects to do with ICTs. They are put under one framework. and you sort of connect them to come up with a comprehensive response to issues of cybersecurity. So I think from a policy point of view, we need a wake-up call within government. Once there is the interception of communication, which again in itself is an infraction and a violation of the rights of citizens. I looked at the statutory instrument. I think it's 142 of 2013, which looked at issues of SIM card registration and the unnecessary and cumbersome obligation that is placed on a consumer when you lose your SIM card.
Yeah.
You have to go and report to the police. It's a violation. I mean, there's no need to do that. They'll be having reports. Once you say that you've lost, the onus has to be elsewhere, not for you to then go and you go to the police will not be having their typewriters or the ink will run out, and you are then forced to come back the next day. That abuse is totally unacceptable. So we need to try and eliminate some of those excesses and be able to put in place something that is user-friendly and much more portable for our consumers. So I would say, I think as a way of prefacing our engagement, that's where we are. The minister obviously has to come to the party and play ball on issues of legislation. E-government is going to be meaningless without an and a cybersecurity framework. Because if you are going to have people getting their birth certificates online, their passports online, without the necessary safeguards, then you are going to have cyberbullying, forgery, terrorism, running havoc. So e-government is actually being manacled and shackled by the absence of a cybersecurity regime. And those are the issues we need to really deal with. So I would say, I think for now, that's where I leave it. Of course, I have this subject which is very close to my heart, the issue of the digital migration, which I feel, again, it falls under the rubric of cybersecurity. We are supposed by now to know our compliance with the ITU deadline of June 17, which is this year. But clearly, the minister doesn't seem to appreciate. The deputy minister is even worse in appreciating the challenge we are facing. I'm not so sure the PEMSEC, but because we have a diverged, mindset in a converged, dispensation. You have media there, you have ICT there, you have transport and communication. So in the other bit now, Portras, I'm told, is under the president's office. That makes it very difficult to then coordinate convergence, and that militates against the ability and competence of the government to deal with the issues that are supposed to be solved. So, come June 17, we're likely to be switched off. People don't even know what the meaning of digital migration is. They've not been educated. The obligation to educate people is on the state, is on the minister, is on the ministry, on the government. That has not been done. I'm sure as journalists, you also don't even know what digital migration is all about. And it's not your fault. Mr. Wanya. Sorry. Well, it might be a cost, but I'm saying...
In that area, there's no way journalists cannot know, because it's part of their curriculum.
Well,
if there are journalists who do not know digital migration, then there's something wrong with the institutions that teach journalism.
Well, if you had allowed me, Dr. Wanya, to complete what I'm saying, journalists may know in a very broad sense what digital migration is, but to know the system that we are going to use in Zimbabwe, they may not know, because it's a function of what the state then says is going to be the system we use. And journalists have to know so that they are able to also help, our society. If our journalists are not informed, you can be sure that our citizens in Chendambwe, in Cholocho, in Binga, would not even know anything. That's my point. And the point, Dr. Wanya, is not to try and challenge the zone of intellect of our journalists, but just to say that it's something that's flowing out of the incapacity of government to send out this information. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Marco. I think for now, I need to just stop.
Thank you, Honorable Chamisa, for clarifying a lot of things. Honorable Chamisa laments a lack of appreciation in government to actually come up and bring a conclusion to this law. And as it stands, most Zimbabweans are vulnerable. They are operating in a system where there's not even a framework to protect them. And this is a worrying issue. And I think these issues expose how our government is not prepared to actually deal with some of these issues in a modern era. Without wasting too much time, I'm going to open the floor for you to ask the experts we have today and Honorable Chamisa questions that you may have concerning the issue. I'm going to take 3 questions and they respond, then we go in another round of questions. May I take the first 3 questions?
I'm not so sure if I intimidated my colleagues, journalists.
All is clear.
Or maybe the clarity is awful.
Let me ask a question. Why, Chamisa, do you think that we need this law? What is the purpose of this law? From a viewpoint of government, also given the changing nature of the media, it's not static. If there's something that changes, if you start with the invasion of the internet by the American security system, to where we are today, this is one field that is changing every time. So are we going to have laws every year, when changes? This is the domain of change. If you want to see the domain of change in the media, it is this domain. So how will you foresee what will happen next time in terms of changes that are taking place within the ICT sector? If you were to make law, thinking that you want to deal with these issues, and things continuously change.
Sure.
And the other issues, the regulations, if they were to be there, given the political economy of the state in Zimbabwe, people, for instance, tend to do certain things because there are no avenues, for instance, of doing things the normal way. So when the avenues, for instance, conversations, democratic conversations are not available to citizens, because the individuals have the agency, structure agency, they will tend to do certain things in order to make sure that they are understood. How do you foresee a regime in a changing political economy where everything has been informalized? You have 84% unemployment, for instance, and democratic avenues are being limited. How do you respond to this?
Well, I think it would be fair for us to have a dissertation approach to the question that you have posed. I'm also sure I'm going to do justice because you have asked almost 10 questions in 2. But I think I'll attempt and hazard to be fair to your question. First, in terms of the ability of the laws to be able to comprehend and manage the proliferation of ICTs almost on a daily basis. That is part of the international discourse in terms of the use of ICTs, that regulation is never adequate, but regulation is always not the way. What we are trying to do is to try and create spaces of security for citizens. Those who are suffering, I would hazard to say actually the state suffers least where you don't have protection of individual citizens. There are people who have been abused on Facebook. There are people who have been abused, their image being besmirched on WhatsApp. There is no recourse. And those are not within government. Ordinary citizens who would want the protection of the law when something is said maliciously that also besmirches or tarnishes the image. It might not be a senior government official, but an ordinary citizen. So yes, I am the first one to concede that is a very difficult area, it's slippery ground for policymakers, because policy making is never going to be adequate. But in any case, laws are meant and designed to try and contain circumstances. Circumstances that may be atrocious to the perfect and good existence of citizens. And that's what we are advocating. To say we need a framework that governs the proliferation of ICTs. If you are to use ICTs, they have to be in a particular framework so that there is a determination, predictability, and confidence by users when they use ICTs. They are able to say, this is my right, and these are the obligations I have. Right now, because our regime in terms of policing is not accurate, you don't know what your rights are. You don't even know what your obligations are. And that, for a citizen, is very dangerous, because I think it actually infracts the very essence of a democratic society. So that's my first point. My second point has to do with what you have already said, to say the political economy of Zimbabwe. You know my views on that. This is why this bill is supposed to engage citizens and to have the participation of citizens. Because if it is done by the state without the superintendent role of the citizens, you are likely to have it as an instrument and a tool of policing and surveilling private liberty. And in the end, you actually have the minimization of the citizens' liberty. So that is an area where I would call for citizens to, within the various, civil society organizations, continue to engage the government.
Thank you, Honorable. Any more questions? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Said I can ask 3 questions. First question, I want to find out where we are in terms of the new ICT policy. I know that you championed the crafting of the last one when you're still running the ministry, and a lot has happened between then and now. And as chairman of the committee, I'd like to believe that you have the greatest appreciation of when we can expect it to be rolled out. And I think it's something that we need to know now as a precursor to anything that comes in line with ICT. My second question is, we talked about how the cyber bill is it's all-encompassing. It's going to affect a lot of industries, a lot of sectors, but all I see is media in this room. Who else is going to be brought to the party? Who else is supposed to share their opinion? Who's going to be contributing their own thoughts and sentiments about what they want from the cyber bill? And then thirdly, in the event that you talked about digitalization or digital migration, and you talked about how there might be a switch off, of which I understand ITU has given us a 6-month leeway period between June and December. In the event that come the 17th of December 2015, we still haven't finished setting up the remote infrastructure in the 14 particular sites around Zimbabwe.
Yes.
What is the government step? Are we going to engage other people? Is there going to be some sort of engagement with ITU?
Yeah, quite a mouthful. Thank you. The first one, let me just also favor colleagues with my appreciation of policy making within government. First, there has to be what is called a white paper, which is developed by the ministry through the various departments. In our own case of the question then, we then consulted the various players, government-wide and also nationwide. We got from operators, mobile operators, your ISPs, internet access providers to also contribute, your CSOs to contribute, and they contributed. So we came up with a white paper, which we then took to cabinet for approval. Once the document has been approved by cabinet, it becomes a policy of government. And once it becomes a policy of government, it goes back to the Ministry for implementation. It then guides the writing or drafting of a bill or laws that are flowing out of the policy. Now we have the cyber security policy bill, like I told you, the digital one, the issue of online transactions, the issue of data protection, which is also a very big issue. Your data is not protected. If you find your data today in President Mugabe's bedroom or at his birthday, you have nothing to say. It will just be there and you have no recourse to try and get either the intellectual remedies or any other proprietary remedies that are available. So that is the challenge we are facing. Now, in terms of where we are from a policy, I've already made the point that they are saying we have to redo the policy because there was no agreement within government. Certain cyber security elements like Office of the President and also the state security, they've indicated some reservations. So they are redoing the policy. So they are still redoing the policy. They have not even developed the bill. Potras, possibly the reason why they are ducking and diving is because they have no information to tell you. If they come here and tell you that they are in this and that stage, they may actually lose their jobs. But I have the latitude to say that because I have no job to lose. There is a problem, and it's cause for concern for every citizen because clearly government is not clear as to what is required. So I think that does it in terms of the policy trajectory. I hope you answered. So we have not done anything.
So the long and short of it is we are nowhere right now.
Yes, in fact, cabinet has not received the policy proposal from the ministry, and they have not even considered the bill. Yet the bills were cited by the president in parliament to say these are some of the bills that are going to be coming through. And it's, I think in what do you call it? Yeah, I've not read that one, but I'm told it's part of the document is very, all I know is that the president made mention of certain bills that are supposed to come before parliament. And these bills are not yet before parliament. And I've inquired, I've gone a step further to check where they are in the state. Nothing has been done within the ministry. So that's where we are. And I've engaged the minister to say, please, minister, you are young, you seem to have energy. From mighty movies, we've seen your capacity to be mighty and to move. So please move and do something. And I hope that is going to really do what it's supposed to do. The second point was to do with who is else supposed to be coming out and meeting. The police, they don't even have a department or a unit or a division to deal with the cyber security. If you go and complain when you have been violated, they don't even know. I think you said something about hacking. Yes. They don't even know. You are talking about hacking. If you talk about interoperability, they don't even know what it is. So those are some of the things. The police themselves have to understand their role, and I think they have to be brought to come to speed in terms of the expectations. Issues of data espionage, for example. Yes. What is data espionage? They also have to be brought to the party in terms. Then you have consumer representative organizations, the industry, business, mobile operators, internet access providers, internet service providers. They all have to be part of the discussion on what has to be put into the bill because we are all affected by this. But I think the media plays a pivotal role in broadcasting and sending out this message to them. So I hope I've answered you on the second. The third one was
migration.
The migration. Yes, I mean you don't want to be a charity. Zimbabwe should not be a charity case. To say we are now benefiting on the extension that has been placed. We're supposed to have done that because what it does is if we fail to then meet the deadline, we are going to have a signal interruption. We are going to have even hacking. and will not have any recourse. So it's actually a threat to national security not to be able to meet the deadline. But countries like America, India, that have done it, have even taken more than 5 years to migrate and to do what is supposed to be done. Now, Zimbabwe, with our capacity, I don't think we're going to take less than 2 years. And that's where my fear is. Everyone is thinking like it's like changing stockings or Patrick Gallia. No. This is serious stuff. It requires a lot of input. People have to be very serious about what has to be done. It requires the effort of government, it requires the effort of citizens, the effort of our media through the sensitization that has to be put out there on the requirements, the system, the cost on the consumer, the cost on the citizen. All those things have not been done. And I don't actually believe that we'll be able to meet the deadline even if we are to extend by 2 years because of the state of preparedness. We don't have that readiness, sensitivity as government to be able to execute that project. If we can't manage to cover people in Binga, in Cholocho, in terms of our coverage of ZTV and ZBC, what more of that migration?
Any more questions?
Yeah, I have two issues. One, realizing that Zimbabwe is a competitive authoritarian regime, and if you look at past laws, the laws that have been passed mainly are meant for regime retention, and they are not democratic to the extent of serving the interests of the citizens in the various sectors that are concerned with those laws. And given that the MDC or the opposition is now a minority and they cannot stop the passing of laws, what would you recommend as advocacy strategies among media advocacy groups, even journalists on their own, to make sure that in the event that the law comes into effect, it has some semblance of it is a human face, and it is not that authoritarian. That's the first aspect. But also there's this dichotomy between statutory regulation and voluntary regulation. Because ICT falls within the realm of the media, it's part of the media.
Sure.
Should we have a statutory regulation or a law governing ICTs, or must have some kind of regulation which is voluntary, without having a law which says 1, 2, 3, 4? Voluntary regulation, statutory regulation, or what others would call independent statutory, where we have a law, for instance, in the form of how the Law Society is regulated. It's statutory, but there is a board that regulates itself. What would be the best model of regulating ICTs?
Well, I think I'll start with the second one. A very interesting discourse around the governance regime. I believe in voluntary regulation for the media, but the voluntary media regulation has to be done within the context of a statute. Otherwise, it will not have the force of law, and also it will not have the force of state apparatus to be able to deal with it. So I know that you would want to take it as a dichotomy between the two. Either you have one or the other. I think you must actually have a hybrid for very good reasons. The voluntary regulatory mechanism is good because it also induces the definition of ethics by experts who are already in the field. It leads to wider media. But the danger is that if you are just to have it as an open-ended thing, it will then have problems in terms of enforcement on certain elements of crimes that may actually border on affecting other citizens. A voluntary, board may not be able to do what is supposed to be done. So I would go for a legislated voluntary body, which is just like the Law Society. You would not say the Law Society lawyers are voluntarily regulating themselves. It's voluntary, but it has a statutory element to it, and that's what I would go for in terms of like what is being done with the bill that's before Parliament. I think it's the accounting profession. I think that is what is supposed to be done for the media. At least you put the parameters in broad and general terms, but then the minor issues are dealt with within the context of the regulating body. That's the second one. The first one is what should be done. I think part of what we are doing, and this is why I had to postpone a matter in court to actually come here, because I realized that it's part of my effort to contribute to the sensitization of the nation on this issue. We must not allow the government to be ahead of us as citizens in coming up with this law. The citizens have to be ahead of government in defining how they ought to be governed, instead of the government being the prefect. If the government is going to be the prefect, we'll end up with, in my view, the curtailment of liberties of the citizens, and that is the danger. We need, as much as possible, to mobilize all the sector players, citizens themselves, to be very active in defining the law. Yes, MDC might be in the minority, but I don't think reasoning is in the minority in this country. So we have to manage the voice of reason. Even if it fails, it can only fail, but for a season. It cannot be permanent. We have to continue to agitate for it, and that's my view.
I think just to add on, maybe cybercrime is a bit broader than to just say that it comes under media. We've got issues that are to do with money, cyber money. Now we're talking about EcoCash, we're talking about telecash, and all these other things. We have a lot of crimes happening already in those areas. Now MasterCard is becoming popular, online, internet, and so forth. So perhaps the media regulation might not be able to cover such issues. We also have child pornography and other crimes that are related. And these crimes can, when they're done on computers, their effects can be greater. Even you spoke about piracy, even xenophobia, and things that one would normally view as hate crime. But when it's done on computers, it's at a higher magnitude. I know that, just referring to a question that was asked by Dr. Wanya earlier on about these bills having to be updated because of how fluid the IT is. America has had many amendments now, and they keep doing it because there is the fear of cyber terrorism. That once it happens, there's no way of stopping it if we don't have the statutory instruments to guard against it, against even the small incidences that can happen. I think it's let's start. Let's have a bill there, and then modifications can come as we update. I think once we say illegal access to a computer is a crime, and then we define what a computer is. It's a mobile phone, it's a mobile device, it's a website, and then we keep adding to that as technology evolves. We can be somewhere. What we need is to be able to have the fundamentals, the foundations in place. Then we can have all those extensions and amendments. You spoke about data security. There's a lot of data that's held on our behalf that we don't even know, and some of it is not accurate, and all that. All that should be covered. We should be protected by cyber law. Imagine if you have a criminal record and you haven't committed a crime. Someone is holding that record for you, and you have no access to it. You have no access to verifying that. And that is, you are supposed to have the right to be able to inspect whatever information is stored about you by a bank, by your employer, by anyone. Those who have done computer science, the UK syllabus, you can actually see the Data Protection Act of 1985 in the UK, because it was part of the curriculum. Now here we don't even have the statutory instrument for us to put it as part of the curriculum for every computer scientist.
In fact, there's now in Europe, what I was reading, what is called the right to be forgotten.
Oh yes, Google, yes.
Yeah, you know that there's certain information that you actually would not want
to be, like what?
Yeah,
stored on Google.
Yes, to be stored on Google, or to be not on Google is better. To be stored at Red Bricks, you know. I don't know if you know where the Red Bricks are.
I mean,
Chaminuga, you know, for the intelligence. There is now that right, and I know that was a big issue. It was actually international case on that one. You know. So those are some of the issues on data protection that may be very crucial.
Yeah, and it might not fall under the media umbrella as it will. But I like the idea of having self-regulation together, coupled with the prerequisite instruments that can allow persecution of offenders.
Just to bring a human face to what we are discussing and contextualizing, do you think then that Minister Dogora's pronouncement to have cell phones and all other gadgets allowed in schools without this draft bill to actually then govern or regulate how these are used is actually tantamount to endangering our school children in these schools? Your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, I don't agree with Minister Dogora. I think he's wrong. You know, he's wrong because I think he got the tools at old age. He may not understand that these tools are very dangerous for the young ones. You know, you can't expose young ones to cell phones. I know parents want that liberty. I know parents are very happy to say, no, my child has to have a cell phone. But these are tools that are not designed to bombard and terrorize, harass the young mind. You know, the young children are minds underdeveloped.
Yes.
And now when they are underdeveloped, they have to be managed carefully. You need almost like a carefully controlled laboratory situation as they go through the acculturation, schooling, and forming of the mind. You can't then impose the internet, which is a world of no. I know under the guise of freedom, you can do that, but you end up having your child conversing with some cyber bully in Ireland because perhaps it does not offend their own cultural practice. So I dread Minister Dogora's views. I think his views border on terrorism.
So in short, you foresee chaos in the school setup without.
Well, those are my views. Without a guiding framework, I think it's dangerous to expose our young ones to the cell phone. The cell phone can be a weapon, but it can also be it's a tool, but it can also be a weapon. It's almost like giving a knife to a child. You know, they would not know what to do with the knife. They will use it as a weapon against themselves. But if you also give to an adult, they know when to use it as a weapon and when to use it as a tool. I think we have a duty to protect our children, our school children. The other time there was discussion about condoms, in schools. And I think Minister Dogora was saying if you are happy to pick, you must just give as part of the packed lunch, or packed supper. I think it's wrong. You know, you are inviting kids to things that they're not supposed to be entertained, and it's not necessary. And why should you give alcohol to a Christian. I don't think it's fair. In all fairness, for the minister to introduce that kind of discourse.
The mobile device is no longer a device that you can just use to receive a phone call to say dad is here. It's now much more. It's now a computer in itself. You know, the WhatsApp messages that we get every day, and to think that's the dose that you want to give to a child, it's unbelievable. Pornography.
There's also this concept called sexting.
Yes. Educators.
I've never tested it, but I'm told it's exciting. You know, the teenagers are. Yeah. And I was telling some old women in Parliament that, you know, you have all gone mad because of sex. Now you want to expose these young ones, you know, to this very dangerous, you know, game. We have to protect our young ones. You know, just as we should protect them against condoms, we must protect them against, I think, uncontrolled use of the internet and cell phones during schooling and in classrooms. I think it's dangerous.
So the important point here, so that I will not be misquoted, we are saying they need to be exposed to the internet, but internet within the context of controlled environment in their schools. That's what I would say. And I think that's what he's saying as well. Because if they're using computers in their school, the teacher there, I think that's good for them. But to equip them with cell phones during school hours, it's destructive. I think it's. I don't know where
So do you see a contradiction? That's where I'm trying to say. Do you see a contradiction there where you have a government that's stalling on coming up with a cyber law, but at the same time
it's not even a contradiction. It's just a dramatization of the confusion in government. They don't know what ICTs are all about. They don't know how to then utilize those ICTs. For most of these ministers, owning a cell phone is about, you know, sending a WhatsApp and receiving a message. They don't even know that the cell phone is more than just, you know, texting messages.
There you have it from our panelists. I don't know if there are any more questions.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, thank you very much for coming and making this discussion a success.